Here is the recap of the first season of X-Men 97. The X-Men believe that Professor Xavier is dead and are now trying to figure out what to do without their leader. However, they continue to help humanity. One day they rescue a young mutant named Roberto from an anti-mutant group called Friends of Humanity. The protagonists discover that their opponents are using Sentinels technology, but supposedly all the Sentinels have been destroyed. The only one who could recreate this technology was Bolivar Trask, and he disappeared somewhere. Jean Grey uses her telepathic powers to find out where he's hiding, but in the process gets some terrifying visions. The X-Men end up destroying the supercomputer controlling the Sentinels, as well as handing Trask to the United Nations. Back home, Jean Grey and Cyclops inform the others that because Jean Grey is pregnant, they are going to leave the team. Suddenly, their nemesis Magneto shows up at the mutant school and tells everyone that Professor Xavier has bequeathed the school and control of the X-Men to him. The main characters are shocked, but they cannot resist the last will of their teacher. Magneto surprisingly decides to act as Xavier wanted him to, and, along with the X-Men, helps both mutants and regular humans. However, the United Nations can't let this go, so they demand that the former terrorist be brought to trial. Magneto agrees, but during the hearing, the courthouse is attacked by the Friends of Humanity. They wound Storm with some strange weapon, causing her to lose her powers completely. Magneto saves all the people in the building, which earns him his freedom. At this time, Jean Grey goes into labor, but the doctor doesn't want to deliver a mutant baby. Then Rogue sucks out the doctor's skills with her ability and helps her friend give birth herself. The boy is named Nathan, and in the evening another Jean Grey appears on the school's doorstep. After checking the DNA of the doppelganger, the main characters learn that this is actually the real Jean Grey, and the one who lived with them and gave birth to a son, a clone. After this shocking news, all go to their rooms, as suddenly in the mansion begin to do strange things. It turns out that the villain nicknamed Sinister is to blame. It was he who some time ago kidnapped Jean Grey and made a clone, which he can now control. He did it to get the perfect mutant, that is the son of Jean Grey and Cyclops. The team fights Sinister, but he along with Jean Grey's clone are too strong. However, the real Jean Grey manages to free the clone's consciousness, and together they drive the villain away. It turns out Sinister has already started experimenting on the baby. Now he is infected with some techno-organic virus, and there is no technology capable of curing him in the present time. That's why the parents decide to give the child to Bishop to send him to the future, where such a cure already exists. After that, the clone Jean Grey calls herself Madeline and leaves Professor Xavier's mansion. Storm, having lost her powers, leaves the X-Men. One day, she meets a mutant nicknamed Forge, whose abilities consist of being able to assemble various advanced devices. Forge is a longtime friend of Professor Xavier, so he offers Storm his help in restoring her superpowers. The special device assembled by the Forge fails for some reason. Suddenly, a demon in the form of an owl appears, baited by Storm's desperation. The demon wounds the Forge, and in an attempt to save him, Storm regains her abilities, realizing that she herself has been blocking them due to her own inner fears. Forge survives, and he with Storm begins a romance. Jubilee and the new mutant Roberto accidentally enter a reality created by a villain called Mojo. There they play a video game, and Roberto ends up showing off his superpowers. Roughly speaking, he can absorb and channel solar energy. The couple manages to defeat Mojo, not without help, and then they get out of the video game, and Roberto takes the nickname Sunspot. Meanwhile, Jean Grey is tormented by the fact that she can't figure out when exactly she was switched to a clone, since their memories have merged, because of which she and Cyclops start having relationship problems. After a while, the United Nations intends to accept the mutant country of Genosha into its ranks. Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit go there, as Genosha needs a leader and they want to make him Magneto for his services to the mutants. Meanwhile, Rogue tells Gambit that she used to have an affair with Magneto, as he is immune to her powers and is the only one she can touch without consequences. During the evening ball, Jean Grey's clone goes outside where she meets time traveler Cable. She realizes that this is her son Nathan, whom she sent into the future. Cable tries to warn her of the danger, but fails and is sucked back into the time vortex. Suddenly, Genosha is attacked by the Sentinels, who are head and shoulders above the ones the main characters have fought before. Thousands of mutants die in the first few minutes of the battle, including most likely a clone of Jean Grey. Magneto disappears somewhere, and Gambit sacrifices himself to destroy the strongest Sentinel. We're shown where Professor Xavier has really gone. Just before his death, he is rescued by Lilandra Narimani, the Empress of the Shi'ar civilization. A relationship develops between them, and Lilandra wants to take the Professor as her husband. Her sister and the Council are against this decision, as the Shi'ar are currently at war with the Kree Empire. But they are willing to agree if her future husband gives up his memories of Earth and his beloved X-Men. Xavier disagrees, and at that moment a mental signal from Earth reaches him. The Professor realizes that his team needs him. He apologizes to Lilandra for not being able to stay with her and then heads back to Earth. After Gambit's funeral, Rogue tries to find the responsible for the Sentinels' attack on Genosha. All suspicions fall on Bolivar Trask, but it turns out he has disappeared again. The girl begins to follow his trail and soon devours the memories of Garrett, who is obliged to know something about it. Rogue sees someone strange, and Garrett is killed that night. At this point, Bolivar Trask himself contacts the X-Men and informs them that although he made the new Sentinels, he did not know that they would be used to genocide mutants. The man tells the main characters where the laboratory is located, after which they go there. The team discovers that the new Sentinels' technology is thousands of years ahead of the ones they've fought before. The X-Men think that Sinister is behind everything, but Bolivar Trask informs them that there is someone stronger than him. Suddenly, the man transforms into something like a biomechanical sentinel, and he easily defeats the mutants. Then Cable appears and disables the Guardian with a special grenade. Jean Grey and Cyclops realize that he is their son, and Cable is going to tell them everything he knows about the near future. We find out who's behind the creation of the Sentinels. It's the Bastion. It's hard to explain in a nutshell what he is. Roughly speaking, as a child, he had the ability to communicate with machines. He was infected with some kind of virus from the future and subsequently ceased to be human. This is why Bastion has such advanced technology. His goal is to create an ideal society without mutants, where humans will be the top of evolution and mutants will be their slaves. Bastion has enlisted the support of some of the most notorious villains to carry out his plan, and has even kidnapped Magneto. Now Bastion is using the techno-organic Sinister virus to turn ordinary humans into guards like the ones Bolivar Trask turned into. Cable tells the X-Men about Bastion and how after 300 years he managed to create a perfect future for humanity, but the mutants are completely enslaved. The protagonists ask Cable why, with his ability to travel through time, he didn't stop the attack on Genosha. It turns out this incident is something of an absolute point in time that cannot be changed. This is what Bastion is used to start a 200-year war between mutants and humans. Meanwhile, Beast examines Bolivar Trask's body and tries to find where the new Sentinel is getting his signals from. Suddenly, he discovers that there are too many of these signals, and at that moment Bastion launches all of his biomechanical robots. It turns out the villain has already created thousands of these Sentinels and they are attacking mutants all over the world. The X-Men are defeated, but at that moment Magneto is helped to escape. The powerful mutant uses his abilities and completely shuts down all electricity on the planet. The Sentinels cease to function, and the main characters manage to free themselves. The X-Men recover from their defeat, but then a spaceship lands on the ruined mansion with Professor Xavier in it. He summons the entire team. Rogue comes to her senses, and Storm with Forge also return to the school. The ordinary people demand the power back and blame it on the mutants, which further plays into Bastion's hands. Meanwhile, Magneto has ripped out a huge chunk of land and can drop it on the planet at any moment, which will kill millions of people. Moreover, he is joined by Rogue and Sunspot. The main characters are divided. Part goes to fight Bastion with Sinister, and the other part goes to Magneto to convince him to return the electricity. The first team finds Bastion's base, but discovers that some of the Sentinels are still functioning, even though there is still no electricity. It turns out that Bastion can control several robots without power with his abilities. In the end, the X-Men are defeated. Sinister demands that Cable be given to him, as he has wanted since his birth, but Bastion refuses his ally. Suddenly, Jean Grey regains her Phoenix powers. She drains all of Sinister's powers and even incapacitates Bastion at first. However, he evolves and is sent into space to Magneto's base. In the future, I will refer to it as an asteroid. Meanwhile, the second team arrives on an asteroid that serves as a base for Magneto. They fight him and Wolverine manages to seriously wound the villain. In response, Magneto pulls all the adamantium out of Wolverine's bones. Professor Xavier has no choice but to get inside his former friend's head and order him to restore electricity to the Earth. At that moment, Bastion shows up at the base and wants to crash this asteroid into the Earth. The X-Men are reunited once again. They fight the villain and even defeat him. Only the President of the United States decides to act ahead and launches nuclear missiles at the asteroid to blow it up before it falls to Earth. But he makes things worse, and now a huge chunk of Earth is headed downward. Bastion is sucked into something like a black hole caused by the reactor's destruction. The X-Men try to stop the asteroid. However, suddenly the huge rock simply disappears somewhere along with some of the main characters. Only Forge and Bishop remain on Earth, who realize that their friends have been scattered through time. Some of the X-Men find themselves in Egypt 3,000 years before the beginning of our era, where they meet a younger version of Apocalypse. And part of the main characters find themselves in the year 3960, where they discover their young son Nathan. We are also shown that in present time in Genosha, Apocalypse picks up the Gambit card. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.